High this time is good for the Ghouls crew. So 7 to 12, it's good for the Ghoul. It is good for the Ghoul, or good for the Gander. What's good for the Ghoul is good for the Gander. Well, hello and welcome back once again to Me, Myself, and I. I am, as always, your intrepid GM, host, and player, Trevor Devall. Thank you so much for joining. And if you want to help support the show, you can like and subscribe, or you can support us on Patreon, or go to DriveThruRPG and go through the links or buy some of our fancy merchandise. All that stuff is in the description below. When last we were with Edbert, he had been taken captive by Vale, the Order Assassin, and questioned by her, and we discovered that she was very interested in keeping Edbert alive because she wanted to bring him to justice. She wanted to have him stand trial for the murder of her very good friend, Sherilyn, so she said. Edbert found a way to escape his bonds by strangling the surgeon who was tending him. He didn't kill him, he just rendered him unconscious, but still. And managed to free Captain Nicola and the rest of the crew of the Drunken Ghoul and furnish them with weapons from the ship's locker in the middle of this raging, crazy storm that was going on. All of the crew of the Grey Mariner are frantically scurrying around trying to weather the storm and to make sure that the storm doesn't actually swamp the ship and cause it to sink. That would be bad for everybody. But in the meantime, down in the hold here, Edbert and Captain Nicola, and there's Wyndham, remember him, and the rest of the crew have furnished themselves with weapons, as I said, and are preparing to launch an attack, a surprise attack from within the hold of the ship and try and take the ship for themselves in the middle of the storm. It's a crazy, crazy idea, but before we get there, we have a few things to do. One, technically we have to end the previous scene, so we're going to do that. Were there any new characters? The surgeon, but he's not really going to be much of a going concern. Other than that, we'll just update the thread list. So first of all, I think we had a thread list, we had a thread of the crew is not happy, there's spies on board, but we already resolve that. And now we need to add a new thread, which is Mutiny on the Mariner. Ooh, that's kind of neat. Mutiny on the Mariner, that's what we'll call it. In terms of the chaos factor, Edbert was more or less successful in the things he did. However, the chaos of the whole situation is sufficiently chaotic to warrant the chaos factor going up to 7. I'm going to give him APs from the last session. Not a ton, I'm gonna give him 8. I'm very stingy. I'm a stingy GM. I have a funny feeling the swimming might become necessary. So I'm going to bump his swimming up from 4 to 5, which costs him 4 points. So he has a 2-point specialty with block right now. So I'm gonna spend another 2 points to get it up to +3, which puts his shield block up to 10. Only with a standard shield though. He's got 3 APs left over for the expenditure of luck. So we begin the scene of Mutiny on the Mariner with Edbert about to lead, along with Captain Nicola, about to lead the crew of the Drunken Ghoul up through the hold of the ship and to try and overwhelm the struggling crew of the Grey Mariner as they fight this storm. Before we do that, we do have to see if the scene is altered or interrupted. The chaos factor is 7 now, and oh, it is not. So we go straight into the battle. Now, Edbert is standing in the hold of the ship, trying not to fall over, because remember, the entire ship is rolling back and forth, heaving in the waves as the storm crashes with tremendous ferocity outside. But he addresses the crew as best he can over the roar of the storm, but not so loud as to gain the attention of anybody who might be listening upstairs, because that would put the kibosh in the entire operation right out of the gate. Listen up. That storm out there is as much of a threat to us as it is to them. If it takes over the ship before we do, we're all dead. You understand? Put your man down and get on that rigging as fast as you can to try and bring this ship under control. The men look to Captain Nicola. He looks at them and looks over to Edbert as well, sort of nods at Edbert, acquiescing to these orders. So this is how this is going to happen. It's kind of a series of boarding rolls, kind of like we did in the ship combat a few episodes ago. So what that means is the Grey Mariner's score is 7. The Ghouls' score is 5 because they were undermanned because they lost 30% of their men. And here's the kicker. The storm also has a score. After the results of the simultaneous roll happen, I then roll for the storm. If the storm is successful in its attack, so to speak, it does damage both to the ship and to both crews. So I'm gonna basically split the score in half and allocate it as makes sense. Also, of course, Edbert is going to be able to freely act as an independent, and if he goes and is able to achieve some end that can help his side, then that side will get a bonus for the next round. So hopefully he doesn't have to fight fail again, because he's still at -1. The question I have is Edbert able to gain surprise in the middle of the storm? I'm gonna call this a stealth roll. It's gonna cover everybody. Edbert's gonna lead it, but if he succeeds, everybody succeeds. I'm gonna give him a bonus of +2 because of the nature of what's going on here. His stealth is 7. If he succeeds on this, then when the crew attacks, they're gonna get a bonus in their first round. Does he do it? He does it just on the button. That is awesome. And it's the best he could have possibly done, which means that everybody successfully takes their position, waiting for the chance. I think Edbert maybe climbs up the ladder and just opens the trap door in the floor a little bit to kind of get a sense as water is sloshing in, and he can hear the cries of men and the groan and creak of the boards of the ship, the crack of thunder and the flash of lightning. But he seizes his moment, and in that moment, he says, "Attack!" And they burst up from the hold of the ship. This is going to be so chaotic, and I'm just going to have them all rush up here. So, in the first round of combat, the crew of the Mariner is only taken off for, a few moments before they realize what's going on here, so it's not a huge advantage. But I'm going to give the crew of the Drunken Ghoul, he succeeded so well on that stealth roll. I'm gonna give him a +2 to their roll. So this is evens. They're both rolling at 7. So if you recall my little house rules here, the number you roll if you're successful is the number you immediately do damage to the enemy crew. Okay, here we go. They're both rolling on 7. The white dice is gonna be for the Drunken Ghoul, and the black, of course, is the Gray Mariner. And okay, well, they both fail. Oh, well, the Ghoul completely failed. But I don't think it's because of, incompetence or anything. I think it's because the attack, while taking the enemy crew totally by surprise, the storm is so bad that it is very, very hard to land a hit on the enemy. In fact, even Edbert at one time, he goes to swing his longsword just as a wave smashes into the side of the ship, causing him to stumble and miss. So there's a lot of that going on. And in the meantime, I think maybe a massive wave is coming over the side. And does the storm do any damage? The storm attacks on 6 this round. It does not. So the wave smashes into the side of the ship, causing everybody to kind of stumble on not any landed effective attacks or anything like that, but it doesn't damage the ship. Okay, that was the first round, so really nothing done. Just the clash of arms, the screaming of men, the smashing of water into the wood. I think that the Captain Greta, may be in the vicinity of Edbert. I'm gonna call it 50-50. Which still gives us a 75% chance to be yes. And look at that. He is. Edbert spins around and sees Captain Greta locked in combat with another one of these guys. Captain Greta puts his man down. Boom. I think Edbert is going to lock into combat with Captain Greta, which means Greta is going to have some stats. So we're going to give him a timing of +2. We're going to give him a strike with his saber of 7. We're going to give him a parry with that saber of 6. A withstand injury of 7. And so they both roll timing. Here we go. Well, obviously Greta's going first, which means that Edbert declares first. Edbert sees him coming. Edbert is still kind of rocked from the, rocking of the ship, trying to get his footing, as everybody is. But he is going to try something interesting now. He, wounded though he is going to come up to Greta. He is going to try and feint and strike and block. He's got a shield. He has used the shield. He just improved the shield. He's going to use the shield. Greta's going to anticipate this because Greta got the better timing. If he gets feinted out, he's in trouble. He's going to have to parry for sure and strike. He's going to parry, strike. So we go into the modifier phase now. Greta is going to roll first. He's parrying. His parry is 6. And he fails to parry, which is very good. Edbert is blocking. Edbert's new block with the shield is 10. So quite good. And he will block for 2. That was Edbert's block. Edbert is also now going to try and feint. He fails, because his feint was 5, -1 for wound penalty, -2 for multi-action penalty. The feint doesn't work, but his block certainly does, which means we go into the resolution phase. Greta acts first. He sees that Edbert has put up his shield, but it's not a very good block. So Greta tries to sidestep around to slash down and hit him. Does he do so? Greta was striking at -1 for multi-action penalty and -2 for the parry, or the block rather, that Edbert did. He misses, thank goodness, with the roll of a 9. Edbert reacts to this, spins around with the longsword, and goes to slash at him. He is going to be rolling at a total of -3. 11 minus 3, which is 98. Does he hit Greta? He misses Greta in that first exchange of blows. Ba, 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 ba. I'm going to do one more combat round between the two of these before we go back to the mass combat to see what happens here. If Edbert can do something to Greta in this second round of his personal combat, it could have an effect by taking out the captain or doing something to the captain here. So let's see what happened. We go back to timing. Edbert rolls a 1 effectively, and Greta rolls 3. So Greta again is first. Edbert's not going to try the feint again. That way it's too hard with the multi-action penalties, but he does need to bring him down. So Edbert being Edbert, that could be a shirt. He's gonna strike twice and block once. Multi-action penalty of 2. I think Greta sees this savage fury of blows about to come in, and he's gonna definitely parry, but he also needs to strike at Edbert to knock him down. Yeah, same thing again. He's gonna block and strike. In the modifier phase, Greta's parry, -1 multi-action penalty, is going to be rolling on 5s. He does, so Edbert unfortunately is going to have a 3 parry penalty to his attack. That's going to make it much, much harder. Does Edbert block? He's going to block on 7, 4. Okay, that's pretty good. Okay, those are the blocks and parries. We go into resolution phase. Greta acts first. He comes in with a swing, -1 multi-action, -4 parries, a total of -5. Could be very difficult to get past Edbert's shield. He's rolling on 2s. He does not get past Edbert's masterful use of the block. Meanwhile, Edbert seizes his opportunity to try and strike back at him. His strike is normally 11 with the longsword, -1 from the wound makes it 10, -2 from multi-action makes it 8, and -3 makes it 5. Does he hit? On a 5, he does! He connects with Greta on a 5. Greta, does he withstand injury of 7? Does he knock it off? He knocks off 5. He knocks off all of the damage. No, not all. Not all. 1. He takes 1. He takes 1. Because you always take 1. I always forget that rule. So Edbert nicks Greta. Where does he nick him? He nicks him in the right leg. He kind of slashes in the right leg. It's a minor cut, but still, first blood. Well, first blood is not enough to turn the tide of combat, that is for certain. We do the second round of mass combat as the two forces clash. The ghoul now is only rolling on 5s, whereas the Mariners rolling on 7. They both fail again. They are unable to make any meaningful difference to each other. Now, obviously, you know, there's cuts and bruises and smashes and cries and stabbings and stuff, but not enough to actually change the focus of the battle. But does the storm change the focus of battle? It rolls on a 6. It does not. So the storm is heaving and tossing the ship like a cork in the water, but it has so far not yet overwhelmed the ship. Okay, is there any change in the status quo between the battle between Greta and Edbert? In other words, does somebody else show up to either help or hinder him? 50-50. Is there a change in the status quo? There is. It's not an extreme yes, so there is a change. Is it in Edbert's favor or is it in Greta's favor? 1 to 3 is good for Edbert. 1, something assists with Edbert, and what it is, it's only a 1 instead of a low roll. One of these guys here has put his man down and has come to join in the battle against Greta. Now, just to resolve this quickly, I'm not going to add him as a separate combatant. What I'm going to do is basically give Edbert's stats a boost, considering he's got some assistance in this. It's quick and easier to do that way. We go into, once again, the battle between Captain Greta and Edbert as the storm lashes the ship. Timing roll. Basically, I'm going to give Edbert a boost to +2 to everything he does, as long as this dude is around. Let's see what happens here. Oh, 12 is a total fail, unfortunately, so once again, Greta is going to go first. Edbert is inspired by the fury and savagery of battle now that he's got a guy helping him. He is going to strike twice. No block. Captain Greta is, of course, going to parry this. Yeah, he's gonna strike back. He has to try. Okay, so that means that in the modifier phase, Greta goes first, so his parry, -1 multi-action penalty, is gonna be 5, and he rolls, and he does not parry. Edbert, there's no parry for Edbert, because he's just coming in hot. So there's no parry penalties or block penalties for anybody this round in the resolution phase. Greta goes first. He is going to be striking, -1 multi-action penalty is going to be 6 or more. Does he hit? He does strike Edbert for 3, unfortunately. So Edbert's going to do a withstand injury roll, which for him is now 7, which is very good. He rolls 5. He knocks off all the damage except for 1. Unfortunately, Edbert is already at -1, so now he's at -2. He takes a minor wound in the right arm. He gets slashed by the saber in the right arm. Blood mixes with the falling rainwater and vanishes immediately, being swept away, washed away over the deck. So that means that his 2 attacks coming in right now, with his multi-action penalty, is going to be further affected by a 2 point. So he's going to be a total of -3 to his strikes. His first strike coming in. He will hit with a 5. Let's do the withstand injury roll for Captain Greta, which is at 7. No, Greta will take 5. Greta gets put down to 1 with that ferocious strike to the left leg. With his second attack, also at 8, he will hit for 2. Does Greta block it with 3? He does, so Greta takes a further damage. Greta is put down to 0. Overwhelmingly, Edbert has the advantage on this, as him and this other crew member are able to slash and cut Greta down to 0. Edbert has also been wounded. We are going to do one more round of battle to see, again, if anything's going to happen that's going to influence the 3rd round of mass combat. Ooh, I don't know, it's crazy. Timing rolls. He's probably going to win again. 12 and 5, yeah, 10, 11, 14, yes. So once again, just the Greta's got this saber, man. It's fast, it's swishing around like lightning. So once again, Edbert must declare, well, he knows he's got a block. And he can't be quite as savage now. He's going to rely a little bit on the help he's got, so he's going to block and strike. Greta I think he's going to shout for help, perhaps from Vale. We'll see if that works. So he is just going to parry this round. Does his shouting bear fruit? We will know at the end of this round. We will check for that. So first of all, in the modifier phase, Greta is going to parry. His parry, no multi-action penalty, is at 6. Does he parry anything off? He does not. Ooh, that's good. He's slipping on his own blood. Edbert is going to block. Oh, I guess it doesn't matter because he's not being attacked. So his block is irrelevant. What matters is his strike, which is coming in right now. Greta does go first, but Greta did not declare a strike, so it is Edbert and company. Edbert and his guy is coming in. A minor hit again. Does Greta withstand the injury? He does not, so Greta takes 2. Greta's put down to -2. Ooh, the same as Edbert. Where does Edbert hit him? He hit once again in the right leg. So that's bad. He's just evened the playing field. I mean, it's bad for Greta, it's good for Edbert, but at the end of that round, Greta's going to call for help. Does it work? Does it work? He's surrounded by his men, but his men are all embattled to no effect with the Ghoul's crew, so both crews are giving as good as they're getting. I think it's going to be unlikely in this case. 55. And it is, yes, he gets... it's not an extreme yes, so I don't think it's Vale. I think she's busy fighting some other guys up here or doing something. I think what that means is that another one of his fellas comes in to basically even the odds, which means that Edbert no longer has this +2 against Greta as the battle swirls around them. Now we go to the 3rd round of mass combat. Edbert has knocked the captain down and the captain is calling for help. I think that's going to have some serious damage on the morale. Does it? Does it have a... You know what? Yes, it has damage on the morale. I'm not even going to roll for that because it would make sense. That's the whole thing. The whole point of these individual combats is to influence the mass combat rolls. So yeah, he knocked him down to -2 and the captain called for help, so definitely it's going to have an effect, which means effectively the Grey Mariner's crew is now rolling on 6s. Mass combat, 6 versus 5. Oh, this is bad news. Unfortunately, even considering the reduced and damaged morale as their captain gets slowly whittled away and butchered down piece by bloody piece by Edbert, the crew of the Mariner is able to do 2 damage to the Ghoul's crew, which makes sense. The Ghoul's crew was already wounded and already exhausted, having just been put in chains for the past 3 days, fighting as best they can. Here's the other question. Does the storm intervene in this? It does! The storm crashes on the ship, and I think just as Edbert is slashed into the leg of Greta as he's called out for help, and this other guy has moved in to help him, taking this other drunken ghoul crewman away from the immediate combat, the storm comes in. Now, half of that damage is to the ship itself. The hull, which was down to 5, because they haven't fully repaired the hull from the battle with the drunken ghoul before. The hull gets knocked down to 3, and the other 2 damage is going to be dispersed evenly among both crews, which puts the Grey Mariner crew down to 5 and the Ghoul crew down to 2. Not looking good for the crew of, well, for anybody, as this massive wave hits the side of the ship. The mast kind of like breaks and shatters and threatens to fall and collapse on the whole group of them. Bad news indeed. Well, we go back now to the battle between Greta and Edbert, and I think maybe they've been fighting their way up the stairs, through the crowd, and now have fought their way all the way here to the back of the ship. We go into a new timing phase, so they're chopping each other down bit by bit. They both, well, again, Greta's gonna go first, unfortunately. But Edbert can smell blood. He declares first. He doesn't have his buddy anymore, so he's gotta play it safe. That -2 penalty is too brutal. He's gonna block and strike. Greta as well, playing it defensively, block and or parry and strike. We go into the modifier phase. Greta's gonna act first with his parry of now. It's effectively 6 minus 3 is 3. Does he parry? He does not. Edbert's effective block, neither of them are able to block each other, which means Greta strikes up here, swinging his saber. Does he strike Edbert? He does not. Edbert is rolling an 11 minus total of 3, which is going to be, once again, 8. He hits with a 6. The withstand injury of 7. Here we go, Captain Greta. Do you withstand any of it? You do not! So that means he takes 6. Greta is knocked down to -8 as he's hit in the left hand. He goes to swing at Edbert. Edbert does not block it, but counter strikes at the same time, catching, oh God, with a -8 too, probably hacking off a couple of Greta's fingers as they go spinning up into the storm and disappearing to go feed the fish in the ocean. Greta screams in agony. He is at -8. His total strike is 7, which means he is defeated. As he goes down, he sinks to his knees and puts his wounded hands up. Well, that's gonna make an excellent case to give an advantage to the Ghoul's crew. I would say an overwhelming advantage. What's happening with Vale over here? We shall see. We go into the next bit of the crew combat. The Ghoul crew will now be back up to 5. A +3 bonus because the captain is down. Morale begins to crumble, rippling like a wave through the crew as they realize their captain is dead, put down, has surrendered. That's even worse. These are equal rolls, 5s on 5s. Oh, and nothing done. Nothing done. The battle continues to rage. Back and forth, and the storm comes in with an attack of 2, which means the hull goes down to 2, and whoa, there's only 1 point left. Is it to the Mariner's crew, or is it to the Ghoul's crew? I'm just gonna roll the D12. High this time is good for the Ghoul's crew, so 7 to 12, it's good for the Ghoul. It is good for the Ghoul. Or good for the gander. What's good for the Ghoul is good for the gander. Which means the Grey Mariner's crew goes down to 4 for the first time. The Ghoul has taken the upper hand, which again makes sense, but it's not necessarily because the captain has been put down. It's because the storm is beginning to tear the Grey Mariner apart. It's down to 2 hull. I have to ask, what happened to Vale? This is a 75% chance of a yes answer. Does she appear or in some way show up here and interfere with him? Oh, 70-60 does not, which is really good. Because if she showed up, she could really fuck up Edbert pretty bad there. I think what he's got to do now is he's defeated the captain. So I think he's gonna try and yell over the storm and try and get the word to spread very quickly. Greta's down and surrendered. The rest of you do the same. Throw down your weapons and help us right the ship, or else we're all dead. Do you understand? Does he get the crew of the Grey Mariner to surrender? I think this needs luck. He is going to spend a luck point on this, so his current APs are now going down to 2. Which means he's going to add 3 to this roll. So he's rolling an Intimidate now on a total of 9. Does he get the Grey Mariner's crew to surrender? He does. It's not a great roll. So I think what that's gonna mean is He does get them to surrender, but the crew of the drunken ghoul is going to take further damage before the news of the surrender basically goes across the totality of the ship, so that the crew is basically going to go down to 4. The crew of the Mariner sees what's happened. They see that their captain has been defeated in combat, missing a few fingers. Those men who are up on the aft can see that. Edbert has intimidated them into not only throwing down their arms, but getting back to saving this ship from the storm under, presumably, his leadership. I don't know, he's not much of a leader, but here's a question. What happened to Nicola? Is he still around? Was he put down? Was he killed? Who can say? Is Nicola able to take control of this situation? Very unlikely. I think something might have happened to him. Chaos Factor 7, 50% chance of a yes. No, which means we don't know what happened to Nicola, but he will take no part of the righting of the ship, which means it falls to Edbert. Edbert doesn't know anything about how a ship runs. His command sucks. His command is 2. It's 2. The hull is also at 2. The storm is still raging. He has to get these men organized. He, who does not have command experience, who does not have experience commanding a ship, he has to rely only on his luck. He has 2 APs remaining. I'm going to spend both of them to add 6 to this roll. Oh boy, which means his command is at 8. If he succeeds, he is able to command and organize these men despite the circumstances to get back to work to prevent the ship from being overwhelmed by the storm. If he fails, the storm will get another attack on the ship. This could be all the marbles right here. 8 or less. 6 plus 2 is 8. He succeeds. He would have succeeded even without the luck. So which tells me it's not his luck that does it. It is his blatant force of will. Also, I think maybe Edbert's a quick learner. He's studied how Nicola handled his men. He's even studied how Greta handled his men, and maybe he learns from it. He begins to shout orders and instructions, nautical terminology that he's picked up. I don't really know it. Hoist the main mizzen and yar the sails and all this stuff. But whatever the case is, the crew has to save the ship, which they do, thankfully. Now the storm is still raging, and it takes them, probably the next few hours of working enemy with enemy. The crews of both ships manages to weather the storm, and I think the storm maybe abates a little bit, but it is hours and hours and hours of fighting. The men are all exhausted, wounded, and exhausted from this fight. So by the time the ship emerges from the storm, I think it's nighttime. I think the stars finally come out, stars they haven't seen in days. The ship is struggling through the waves, its sails hanging in tatters, its main mast cracked. The men are all totally exhausted, so exhausted they can't even think about mounting a counterattack like the men of the Grey Mariner. But they are rounded up, slowly, because remember, the crew of the Grey Ghoul is just as exhausted, so it's sort of a half-hearted attempt, but they are able to round the men up and basically put the crew of the Mariner in the hold in chains. And this time, Edward makes sure that no one has the key but him. He learns from the mistakes. What happened to Vale? We're gonna find out in a second, but let's end that scene. Mutiny on the Mariner. That thread is closed. Were there any new characters? No new characters, no new threads. So we're just gonna go into the next scene. Oh yeah, and the chaos factor, of course. I think it goes down. The crew of the Drunken Ghoul now fully in control of the ship. Still exhausted. There's a couple things we need to know going into this scene. Is it interrupted or altered? Chaos factor 6. 10, no, it is not. So there's a couple things that Edbert needs to find out immediately. As soon as the ship is free of danger, Edbert looks around and he's looking for Vale. Is it possible that Vale, seeing the tides turn very quickly, is it possible that she had some sort of escape plan? She was pretty confident of her success in this endeavor. I'm gonna say it's unlikely she did. Unlikely she did. She did not, which means she is still on board. Was she wounded? I'm gonna call that somewhat likely that she suffered some kind of wounds. Yeah, she did, but barely. Here's the big one. Nicola, how bad are his wounds? I'm gonna say unlikely that he's on death's door. He is not. Okay, that's good. He was wounded, he was put down bad, but he is able to recover Vale is also now taken captive by the crew. She's disarmed, she's put in chains, put in manacles. She's very, very dangerous. As the crew are, exhaustedly rounding up the crew of the Mariner and putting them in chains and taking them down to the hold to lock them up, Carlos is brought up from the hold, wounded as he is, and Vale and Carlos stand side by side in front of Edbert and Captain Nicola. He goes up to Carlos, who he last saw after smashing a cutting board over his head.
Give me one good reason why I shouldn't throw you overboard right now, bloody traitor.
He's defiant, Carlos. Wicked Carlos is defiant. And he looks directly at Captain Nicola, and he says, "You may do to me whatever you wish. Only know this. What I did for love." Vale, standing next to him, just kind of gives him the side eye a little bit, but doesn't actually respond. She knows the score. She knows what's going on here. But I don't know what her feelings for him is. I don't know what that is. She's got bigger fish to fry at the moment than that. I'll decide what happens to you later. But for now, put him in the hold with the others. And they clap him in irons and take him down to the hold. Once again.
And what of this one? If you ask me, she's much too dangerous to be allowed to live. Aye, I think you're right about that.
But he kind of looks her up and down. She is defiant. Again, she has this unreadable expression in her face. We know that Vale is menacing, so she stares directly back at Edbert. Looking at this, based on their expressions alone, you would have no idea that it is Vale who is the prisoner here. She carries herself with this almost regal nature, like she is still somehow in charge, even though it is clear she is not.
I will decide what to do with her later. We can't leave this viper on board alive. If we were so easily able to effect our own escape, how long do you think it'll be until she does the same thing? I'm not saying we keep her on board the ship, Captain. I'm saying that there's another thing we can do.
He looks directly at Vale. For a second, her facade cracks, like, what?
I think we need to look at the charts to see where we are.
They leave Vale in the custody of several of the men, while Edbert and Nicola go into the captain's quarters where they begin to study Greta's charts. Nicola is able to read them no problem. He's an experienced captain.
Shortly after that, Edbert and Nicola come out.
Vale on her knees, in chains, head held high, proudly, menacingly, menacing the rest of the crew that are sent to keep an eye on her. They're very unnerved by her. Edbert comes out.
You're not gonna die here today, Vale. Although, you've earned that. I am not gonna have your blood on my hands. Because like it or not, believe it or not, Sherilyn's blood is not on mine. And I'll be damned if I'm gonna have your friends decide that your blood is on my hands too. So, we're heading to a small island, be there in a few hours. On that island, I'm gonna set you and your lover Carlos, and probably the rest of this crew as well of the Grey Mariner.
She kind of looks at him. Again, unreadable expression in her eyes.
I believe the term, what is it, Captain? Marooned. I'm not gonna kill you, but I'm not gonna have you on board the ship plotting against me either. That is gonna be your fate.
I don't think she says anything. I think she just nods as though this is all part of her plan anyway.
Are you certain you want to leave an enemy crew alive like that? It is possible that someone comes along and finds them on that island.
Aye, that could be the case.
But if it is the case, then let it be in the guards' hands. For I am washing my hands of Vale.
Captain Nicola gives the order to set sail for these coordinates on this small island. And a few hours later, they arrive. It's the middle of the night. Small groups of men of the Grey Mariner crew are ferried over to the island and left there. As they are about to bring Captain Greta, however, Edbert steps in and says, not him. Because remember, he was on this ship. Presumably Greta was the captain when that happened because it wasn't all that long ago.
You want to keep him on board? In the past few hours, Captain Nicola, this ship has started to become familiar to me. I'm certain I was on it, and I think it has something to do with how I got here in the first place. This man, this Captain Greta, he's the only one that might be able to give me some answers about that. So, I want him to stay, where I can ask him some questions.
So they keep Captain Greta as a prisoner, but the rest of them, Vale, Carlos, and the rest of the crew of the Grey Mariner are ferried across and marooned on this island. Before she goes, as she's getting into the boat with the rest of the men, she says to Edbert, "I think you know that you haven't seen the last of me, Edbert."
Frankly, Vale, I'm counting on it.
As the boat is pulling away, Carlos as well pipes up, "I as well will find you, Edbert, and exact my revenge!"
Edbert just watches them leave.
Well, that brings that scene to an end. Chaos Factor, gonna go down to 5. Were there any new threads? Yeah, Vale and Carlos marooned. In the captain's quarters later, Captain Nicola has rearranged a few things to make the ship more amenable to him and his haggard, tired crew. Edbert is sitting across the table from him.
One thing's for certain, Edbert. This ship and its crew are in no condition to weather another storm or to survive a fight should one come our way. We need to put into a port somewhere. I think that Stormsworth is the closest one.
No, Captain, not Stormsworth.
That's where Vale wanted to take me. I think that the rest of her order might be lying, waiting for me there. We need to go somewhere else.
Well, it's not like Stormsworth is the only port in these parts. I'll have to find a new one, but in the meantime, we'll do what repairs we can and have these men get some much-deserved rest.
Aye, Captain. Much-deserved rest.
And as he says that, and the rest of the crew begins to, do effect what repairs they can on the sea, Edbert, looking out on the bow of the ship as they ply their way through the waves towards some new port. His first thought is about the conversation he just had with the captain, about the crew getting some rest, and he thinks to himself, rest that he has been able to have these past few months, only because Sherilyn Spiritbane has not yet returned. But we know, as does he, that she will. It is just a matter of time, which leads him to his second thought. Is it possible that Captain Nicola might be able to help him get rid of this ghost? Now, the only reason he thinks this is because he knows that Captain Nicola has a treasure map, but it was never decided or never discussed as to what that treasure was. It's possible that this treasure is not buried gold, gems, silver. It is possible this treasure is altogether something different. This treasure might be something that is not only not material goods, but also could be, possibly, a key to Edbert finding a permanent solution to the dissolution of Sherilyn Spiritbane. But if that is the case, we're not going to find out till next time. Thank you so much for joining me. As always, if you like the show, please do hit like and subscribe. And if you want to help the show on Patreon, I very much appreciate it. We will see you next time on the next episode of Me, Myself, and Die.